And thank you to everyone that's joined today's webinar. Today's always an interesting subject when it comes to what's new in the software. For those customers that have used our program in the past, this last tax season, now we can figure out what exactly has changed when it comes to this new program. So let's get right into it. When it comes to today, we're going to be covering essentially three things. All the new features in CrossLink 2020. And for those that installed the software, you may have noticed the new black icon that appears now. So just keep that in mind. When you install the new program, there's going to be a new icon that's mostly black and says 2020 on your desktop. We'll also take a look at the new and updated 1040 forms. So not only are we talking about like the software and its features, but also any changes made to the tax forms and differences when it comes to that. So if you are focused on the tax preparation, want to know more about what's changed when it comes to tax prep in CrossLink, we'll discuss that. And then finally, for those that are using the business or corporate package to prepare your 1065s, 1120, and the 1120Ss, we'll talk about some enhancements when it comes to the business package as well. And then finally, I have an update regarding our TaxPass app, which we'll talk about at the end. So if you're using TaxPass or would like to learn a little bit more about TaxPass, we'll wrap up this webinar with that little bonus update towards the end. But for now, let's focus on what's new in CrossLink 2020. All right, so the first thing you'll notice when you open up the software is that there's a new tool on the toolbar called the Refund Calculator, or Refund Calc. This tool essentially allows you to create a quick estimate of the taxpayer's refund without having to open up the tax return. But once you do create that estimate, you can use that information to populate the tax return and create a new return using that information. So traditionally in the past, if you wanted to create an estimate of a taxpayer's refund, the program would require you to open up a new return, go to the return menu and choose Tax Return Estimator. But now you can do that outside of the return without having to gather the customer's social, and then later on add that new return if necessary. Okay, so definitely something for you to try out when you open up your new software. Click on that Refund Calculator button and give it a try. In addition to that, we also have this new electronic filing fee. This is outside of the software, but it relates definitely to the software because this is a fee that can be added not only for bank product returns, for tax returns that have a bank product associated with them, but also to non-bank product returns. Similar to our other add-on fees, such as the add-on fee, the doc prep fee, this is another type of add-on fee that can be associated when you're enrolling your EFIN with the bank. And but the one what makes this particular fee special is that it can be added to all returns, selecting that little checkbox that's circled over to the right. Keep in mind, though, that if you are using this add-on, this e-file fee, this electronic filing fee for all returns, it requires that a credit card be placed on file to pay the fees. Since the bank, if it's a non-bank product return, the fees aren't going to be deducted automatically. So to pay those fees, you would pay using your credit or debit card. But this is just a quick recap of what this fee is about. If you do want further details, I definitely urge you to contact your account manager. They can provide you all the information about how this fee works, if you are interested in it. Okay. But returning to the software, another change that you'll notice, this is when you're inside the return and you're on the information and status page inside the return. You'll notice that there's some new statuses, some new fields for all the different types of bank products that occur. In the past, there was typically just one bank product associated per customer. That's why if you look down below here, there was just one response when it comes to the bank products. But now, multiple bank products can be associated with a single return, if they're using that advance, for example. So we have 3 lines to give you the status of what's going on with the customer's bank product. Okay, and again, that's on the information status page when you're inside the return. Another interesting aspect for the new software is that we've noticed that sometimes people really enjoy archiving, or they prefer the software to archive the copies that they print automatically, as opposed to setting it up in the software. So that's what's going to happen now. All electronically signed documents, anything that represents the preparer's copy of the return, that's all going to be stored in your document archive automatically as a PDF. That no longer requires you to go into your printer setup and manually configure it. So one less thing to worry about when it comes to the configuration of the software. That's all going to be taken care of. Especially if you're new. If you're new to CrossLink, you'll avoid that type of configuration. If you're using it in the past, then that's fine. All your configuration transfers forward to the next year. Remote signature when printing current form only. So this is when you're inside the return and you choose or click the print button, the print menu up top, and you choose to print the current form only, whatever's on screen. Now you'll have the ability to sign for pretty much any document in which you choose current form only. Traditionally in the past, the remote sign feature to have the taxpayer sign remotely using their cell phone, that was typically used for like the entire return, the final tax return, and bank documents, and specific packages of forms, But now it's pretty much any form. You can go to current form only. You'll see those options pop up where you can click on remote sign to capture the signature, and you're welcome to use it for any form you want to capture a signature for. And then when it comes to the client letters, this is when you're in setup and then client letter setup. Or I guess I should mention when you're printing. If you want to modify the client letters, that's what you would do. You go to setup and client letter setup. But when you're printing or creating PDFs of the federal, state, and engagement client letters, just note that the signature and signature date will be filled out automatically whenever you use either a signature pad or the remote sign capability. In the past, those were not filled out automatically when you were using those tools, but now they will be. Okay, so please be aware of that. And extended reports. When we're talking about creating your own reports in the software, you have that ability by clicking on the extended button on the toolbar. This extended button, if you never used this button before, this button appears when you're on the lookup screen, when you're looking for your customers, and you see the Go button. That's when you'll see this extended button appear on the toolbar. And if you click on it, you'll see the window that we see over here to the right, where you can kind of create the fields that will display in the custom report. And just know that we've added a few more options that you can use to create your own custom reports, such as the ones that we see listed here, the carrier or texting, which is useful when you're sending text messages or using the remote sign capability, and everything else that you see here. So just some new fields so you can create some more detailed custom reports. Transfer returns to CrossLink Online. This is a new utility, and you actually find this available as an update with our tax year 2018 as well. For those folks that plan on transferring to CrossLink Online, or that are potentially thinking about it at some time down the line, moving from desktop to online, just note that you do have the ability to transfer the returns that are currently in your software to our online program, and it's through the utility menu. Now, this requires for you to have an online account, to make that purchase of your CrossLink Online software for you to use this functionality. But I just wanted to point it out since it is considered a newer feature in the software. And definitely something to keep in mind if you do plan on either using CrossLink Online now or in the future. And now some new office setup options. We're just going to go through some, this is going to be a bit more, I guess, technical, go through some of the options that are available when you're in office setup. And I'm organizing them by the tabs. Once you're in office setup, there are some different tabs across the top. We're just going to go through some of these and see all the different options that are new for this new program. So the first one is under the Overrides tab. And what we're talking about here is the ability to auto-add state returns for both for both 1040 returns and business. So keep that in mind when you're in the Overrides tab. You can auto-add your state returns to the tax returns for both personal and business or corporate returns. And then there's also the ability to disable the auto-add for unreleased states. So if the state is not released yet, it'll disable that auto-add pop-up. But once the state is released, you'll receive it. That's the Overrides tab. Now the Defaults tab has some other options as well. You'll find a new option called Require DDL Entry for Wage Income. That means double entry for wage income. This is an option. If you activate this in the Defaults tab of Office Setup, the preparers will have to enter in the wage and income information twice to confirm that they're entering it correctly. And I believe this is more of a labeling change. That option was there in the past, but now I think it's just a bit clearer as to what this means exactly, where it says require double entry for wage income. Now the auto-add schedules 1 through 3, this has to do with the newer 1040 that was established this last tax season. And so if you want to automatically add these schedules to the form and not have to pick them from the add form list, you can do so for all returns by selecting this option under the Defaults tab. But note that if you do select this option, it'll be added to the cost of tax prep. If you have fees associated with these schedules, if you're auto-adding them, they'll be added to the cost of the return, assuming that you have a fee associated with this form. So keep that in mind. Some other requirements. These are pretty straightforward. Require cell phone. So if you want your tax preparers to have to enter in the customer's cell phone or to select a box saying that the customer does not have a cell phone, then this is an option you can select. Require cell phone. And again, this is all in the Defaults tab. Require email address, and again, very similar. If you want the tax preparer to have to enter in an email address or select a box saying that they don't have one, then you can activate this one. And then there's also this interview forms tree color. This, by selecting this box, it simply just highlights the interview worksheets, all the worksheets that are part of the interview process when you're using the interview tool to prepare a return, just to make it easier to see and to tell which one is which. And now, so all that has been through on the Defaults tab. Now let's take a look at the General tab. This is an interesting new feature that we've launched here with CrossLink 2020. This allows you to create additional web tabs. You know how on the top of the CrossLink software, you have these different tabs. At the very top, you have the 1040 returns, business returns. You have one called website, which takes you to crosslinktax.com. But you also are going to have these new ones that you can create if you wanted to. So if you want your preparers to have the ability to quickly go to a specific website while in the software, not only can you go to our website, CrossLink Tax, but you can add up to 3 unique URLs to that. So, and again, that's under Office Setup and the General tab. And when it comes to printing changes or printing options, we've got some new printing options as well. When you're under Setup and Printer Setup and you go to the 1040 Return Printing tab, first of all, you'll see that you'll find the bank application, the ability to automatically print the bank application as part of the return. Now that's there. It used to be part of print options, but now the bank application form is listed with all the other types of forms. So you can select that to be part of the print packet if you want. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, the send to archive. Now your prepared copy is going to be stored in the document archive automatically, so that's not even a setting you have to worry about anymore. But you can still see it there. You can see that it'll be automatically selected for you. So that was the 1040 return printing tab. Now, under the printing options tab, you do have a couple of new options here. So if these sound interesting to you, you're more than welcome to activate these in your software. One is the always email doc. This one I would select if you plan on mostly sending copies of the customer's return via PDF through email through the software itself. I'd recommend this one, selecting this box. It'll automatically select the email doc checkbox. This email doc checkbox appears when you click on print, right? And then you're either using the remote sign functionality or the sign doc functionality. There's a little email doc checkbox. Selecting that box would send this signed copy to the taxpayer automatically. So now, if you go to here to print options and select always email doc, it'll have that email doc checkbox selected by default. You won't have to select it yourself, saving you a click. And then always print email signed, or excuse me, always print e-signed documents. So this one, if you select this option, anytime you use the sign doc button, it's also going to print a copy of whatever you're using that sign doc button for, whether it be the full return or any other type of specific form. Whenever you use sign doc to use the signature pad, it'll send a copy to the printer automatically. If that sounds like something you'd like to do, feel free to click on that option. And again, this is under Setup, Printer Setup, and the Printer Options tab. All right. So now those are all the changes that we've made to the software when it comes to the options and configuration and all that. Now let's take a look at some of the changes made to the tax forms. Now, once we start talking about tax forms here, it's going to get a little bit dry, so please bear with us as we go through this. But there's going to be a lot of text on screen, so let's go through it. So first, when it comes to the 1040, just note that the 1040 will now print as 2 pages as opposed to 1, just following the changes required by the IRS. It's going to be separated into 2 changes. They're not going to be able to fit onto a single page as they did for tax year 2018. And as far as any additional changes to the 1040, they are just listed down below. These are, kind of just minor changes to be aware of, changes here and there. But I wanted to list them out for you here so you can be aware. Okay, I'll give you a moment to kind of review through these, but all just very technical things that have changed for the 1040. All right. So now let's break into the schedules and see what's changed there. As far as the Schedule 1 goes, capital gains or loss on the Schedule D has been removed, and the line for entering the original divorce or separation agreement date for alimony paid has been added. Okay, that's on the Schedule 1. Schedule 2, we have some changes made as well. We've consolidated all other taxes into 2 parts. For the old Schedule 2 and the 4. Part 1 has to do with alternative minimum tax and the excess advance premium tax credit repayment. And Part 2 are other taxes. Okay. Schedule 3, consolidated credits and other payments into 2 parts. This was 3 and 5, essentially. So Part 1 has to do with non-refundable credits, and Part 2, other payments and refundable credits. All right, moving forward. New forms and worksheets. There's the 8275 or disclosure statement. This form can be sent with the IRS, with the return to the IRS to disclose any items or positions that weren't adequately presented on the tax return. So this is kind of like a disclosure statement to add additional details about this particular taxpayer. There's also the 8995 or the 8995A both of these forms have to do with QBI, or qualified business income. There's the insolvency worksheet, the worksheet that's been added to the program for instances that Form 982 is not needed. There's the 1040 ES and R, non-resident. So this is for use for non-residents to figure out what their estimated tax would be for 2019. There's the 1040 SR, an interesting new form here. And this is essentially a checkbox. You select that would, or actually it would be an option for anyone over 65 that prints a 1040 SR. It's basically the same thing as a 1040. The only difference being that the print is larger. So to help those that have difficulty reading small text. Schedules 1 through 3, some other updates. They've now the 1 through 3 covers everything that 4 to 6 had. What was on 2018, there was schedules 1 through 6. Now it's all been consolidated into schedules 1 to 3. Form 8949, the form now allows the import of adjustment codes and adjustment in amounts. So, and there's also a new field that's been added when it comes to tax withheld from Form 1099B. There, when it comes to the W7 forms or ITIN request forms, the new choices list has been added for lines 6E and 6F to pull information from the client data sheet. So this is just a convenience thing. When you're on W7, when it comes to these lines 6E and 6F, you can now use the choices button to populate the information. Okay. And then there's also Form 2210. There's a new calculation option that's been added to use 100% of the estimated tax. And this should be used when the taxpayer wants to pay all of their estimated tax and not just the amount to avoid the penalty from the IRS. The 1040 ES now has some new override fields that were added to allow changes to estimated amounts and dates. These dates and amounts are when let me take a look here. So let me read this with you here. New override fields were added to allow changes to estimated amounts and dates that then display calculated estimates after changes to return and or estimate have been made. So these changes help maintain the integrity of the preparer's entries while still showing any change in estimate amounts after a change in the return. All right. Hopefully that makes a little more sense. This is a new one for me, so I apologize I don't have more information about it, but hopefully the description provides you the information that you need. And when it comes to the W-2, the checkbox has been added to the W-2 to indicate whether or not the wages are exempt for the 1040 non-resident. There's also Form 116. This has to do with foreign taxes entered on 1099 div or dividend or 1099 INT. And then Form 1098, box 10 has now been enhanced to pull real estate taxes to the Schedule A from line 5B. All right. So those are some changes made to the forms. Now when it comes to, a lot of folks have been having questions about the Affordable Health Care Act, how that's been changed for this upcoming tax season. So just note that a penalty for not having health insurance no longer applies for these returns. And the elimination of an individual penalty means these three that we have here on screen, that the health insurance checkbox on Form 1040 is gone. The penalty line on the 1040 Schedule 2, that's gone. And the Form 8965, the health coverage exemption, that's also been eliminated. But everything else, when it comes to the ACA, like Form 8962, state and federal exchanges, those still remain in the software. but when it comes to things having to do with the penalty, those no longer apply. Okay, so thanks for sticking around with that. Those were all the tax changes that were for this that are coming up for this upcoming tax season. Now we can focus on the changes made to the business package for the tax return. So let's go through these as well. Well, first of all, there's a new state. Washington, D.C. has been added to the program. So if you prepare corporate returns for D.C., you can now use our software to do that. The ability to email the business return has been added. This is something that's available in our 1040 software, but now it's been added to the business package. So if you want to email the business representative that is associated with this business through the software, you're now allowed to do that. And then the same thing that we saw with the client letters, whether the signature and the signature date is filled out with the signature pad or remote sign, that's been enhanced as well. So these client letters, they'll have the customer's signature and the signature date. And then new forms and worksheets. Let's just go real quickly. The 8995, which relates to QBI, that's been added to the corporate package. 8275, the disclosure and statement form. The K1 has some enhancements as well when it comes to calculating QBI. And then three-year tax comparison, that's been updated to show 3 prior years of taxes. The K1 has some new codes and amounts for 1120s, S's, the 1065, and the 1041. And we have the 199A worksheet that's been enhanced as well. It can now can be used to determine information that should be passed through to the owners or beneficiaries of the business entity. And then finally, that's everything that has to do with business. One last thing I wanted to mention about TaxPass. If you're new to TaxPass or you aren't familiar with this application, this is an application that your customers can use to send you data to your 1040 software. But something that's changed for this upcoming tax season, a new feature, is what we call a kiosk mode. So in the past, this app was used primarily by customers. Your customers would download it onto their phone and send you their information to your software. But now you can use this in your office, essentially. You can click on this kiosk mode and use it as a way to send information to your tax software without having to go through this like customer registration process that your taxpayer would have to go through. Now it's just kind of like a quick way to send information. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely urge you to download the new TaxPass app. The one that we have available right now on the Google Play Store and on the Apple App Store, that one is for tax year 2018. So for this like current tax year that we're still in, the new one for this upcoming tax season and the one that has this kiosk mode enabled, that's going to be launching very soon. It has an ETA date of the 16th of this month. So here next week is when this new app should be available. So if you're interested in that or want to take just a quick look and see how that could work for your business, potentially use it as this kind of like lobby device where people sitting in the lobby can just go through the app, enter their information, and submit it. That's something you can do with this app, and it's completely free and included with your cost of the software. But with that said, I think we've covered absolutely everything when it comes to new software enhancements for the desktop program and all these changes made to tax forms and your corporate forms as well.